Hi
Hi,
everyone. It's Sarah.
can you see
Hi,
me?
I'm Anisha.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for watching another interview for UnifyChai. Today we are with Chhavi Bhargava, who is an author. So today we will be interviewing her and kind of learning about their journey throughout their career. All right, so the first question we have for you is, could you tell us a little bit more about just yourself and your journey towards creating books and just your journey towards becoming an author?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Canada and I was in India first and then I came to Canada when I was 6 years old. And growing up there, there was a large Indian community. However, I was probably the only brown person at school.
Mhm.
So I grew up there. And then as I got older, I was really inspired to become a teacher. And I taught in Canada for about 10 years. And that's one of the places that I got really inspired because the kids that were in my classroom were from all different backgrounds. And I really wanted to teach them something about me and share something about me to them. And so I looked at all the books and the worksheets and the math worksheets, and it was all like John and Brenda and names that didn't I didn't see myself in, and my students didn't see themselves in. And so I started developing an inclusive curriculum with my kids' names. So I would literally type out every single worksheet by myself, put my kids in my classroom and their names and things that were significant to them, and created that. And from that, I actually created a very inclusive curriculum that my county was really impressed with. And eventually, the Ontario School Board was really interested in learning about. And so I helped the Ontario School Board write a curriculum for teachers all over the province.
Perfect. We love hearing about that, and especially how, like, you started within your own classroom, and that's where the change started, and how that kind of spread from, like, your classroom to your school to your county, which we really love hearing. So, kind of moving on from that, our next question would be, is that we saw that you recently published a book, a kid's book about Diwali. So, can
Yeah.
you kind of explain your journey writing that book and what inspired you to create it?
Yeah. So growing up in Canada, Diwali wasn't recognized in my school, right? My mom would send me treats and sweets to bring to school. And I was honestly so embarrassed, to bring anything in there. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to think it's like really weird. It smells different. It tastes different. It looks different. I couldn't wear Indian clothes. I couldn't share a big part of me with anybody at school, right? Uh, and so when I became an elementary school teacher and I developed all these inclusive lesson plans, I actually started a multicultural club. And in that club, and that was the very first club in the county that I started. And that was a space for kids to come in and be able to feel safe, to be heard, to teach and share their cultural stories. We had food, cultural food. I mean, this is going back 1995, right? And so it just didn't exist then. I remember I ordered pizza for the staff and everyone had meat on it. And I'm not vegetarian, but I like vegetarian pizza. And they were like, what do you mean, vegetarian pizza? Why would you get vegetarian pizza? Or we had kids mostly were Muslim and they celebrated Eid. And they had the Parent Teachers Association had hot dog day. And they were like, I don't know why we're not making any money. Why isn't anybody buying hot dogs? Well, it's because they don't eat pork, right? So they didn't, it wasn't that they were racist. It was more so that they were ignorant, that they didn't know, that they didn't understand different cultures. And so I felt it was important for me to do that. And so then I became a mom after becoming a teacher, and I have two boys. And my boys, I brought a lot of culture, Diwali, Holi, a lot of celebrations into their life because I wanted them to grow up the way I grew up and making sure that they didn't feel isolated like I did. However, my son, when he was in third grade, I said, honey, look, you don't have to go to school. I'm going to take you out of school. We're going to celebrate Diwali and we can wear lots of Indian clothes. And he was like, why? Why do I have to wear Indian clothes? Nobody else wears Indian clothes. Nobody else celebrates Diwali. I want to go to school. Well, I couldn't argue with that. And so I said, okay, you can go to school. So I called the school principal that day and I said, hey, would you mind just going on the PA and asking or just mentioning, hey, happy Diwali to everyone that celebrates?
Mhm.
And the principal of the school said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And I said, what? They said, well, you have to take it up with the school board. And so then I asked him, okay, well, would you mind just taking my son in the hallway and just wishing him a happy Diwali one on one? To hear it come from someone that he looks up to, I think it would mean a lot. And I was still given a no, not because I don't want to, but because they thought they weren't able to, because maybe it wasn't something that maybe they'd get in trouble for. So I wrote to the county many, many times, and I really didn't get the response that I was hoping for. So that was something that was stirring inside me for a very long time. Of course, I brought lots of, I would read books in schools, and I would bring Diwali sweets to school and teach the classroom about Diwali, but I just couldn't find the right book. And I used to be a teacher, right? So I needed a book that was inclusive, that everybody, no matter what their background was, could pick it up and really identify with and connect with and be like, oh, I can see myself in that book. Oh, now I understand why wishing you a happy Diwali means so much because it helps you feel seen. It makes you feel like you belong. I wanted all children, all teachers to be able to say, oh, hey, wait, I can celebrate Diwali too. And then them to understand that Diwali is a celebration like something you celebrated before. It's kind of a combination of celebrating Christmas, New Year's, Independence Day, even Thanksgiving, right? You're celebrating a new year. You're celebrating with fireworks and lots of light. Christmas is a festival of lights. Hanukkah is a festival of lights. There's a lot of festival of lights. Thanksgiving is about giving back, and so is Diwali. Diwali is about giving back to your community, right? So a lot of these traditions that we already celebrate, I talked to a boy and I was telling him, about Diwali, and he wasn't South Asian. He'd never heard of Diwali before. And I told him it was a combination of all these celebrations. And he was like, I cannot wait to celebrate Diwali this year. And he was so excited. He already had a plan and he was super excited. So that is where my inspiration came from. And that's one of the reasons it was really important for me to write the book.
All right, thank you so much for your response. And it was really great hearing your journey in terms of like how you started off and how far you went with creating the book. We wanted to learn a little bit more also about like the readers who read your book and how you felt like they have been inspired through reading your books.
Yeah, the book just came out, right? So I actually don't know. But what I do know is that the parents have picked it up. I've gotten a lot of reviews on Amazon. I've got 96 reviews so far, which is really excellent. And what's really interesting, I found, is that a lot of South Asian moms, although they celebrate Diwali and they know about it, they picked it up and they said, I learned something new in this book. Teenagers, my boys are now teenagers. They picked it up and their friends picked it up and they're like, I learned something new in this book. Like I didn't know that it was 5 days of Diwali. I didn't know that Diwali was celebrated all over the world. I didn't know there was a billion people that celebrated Diwali. And a lot of people didn't know the significance of Ram and Sita and Lakshman and Ravan and how it's about good over evil and light over darkness and justice over inequality, something that we can all understand and we can all unite with.
Right.
So, yeah.
Perfect. We love seeing like how it influenced people from all backgrounds, regardless of how much people thought they knew it. Kind of created this new perspective and put a new light on what Diwali is. So kind of moving on from that is While writing the book and getting the book published, what challenges did you face throughout that journey?
Yeah. So if you have read a lot of Hindu mythology, there's sometimes a lot of violence
Mhm.
in some of these stories, right? And I still wanted to have the essence of the story without creating any kind of violence in these stories, right? And so you have to be very careful. Now, Diwali is celebrated by Sikhs, by Buddhists, by Jains, right? People from all over the world. And so if I told one story, I'd be leaving all these other stories out. So how do you create a story for a kid that's not too complicated, that's simplified, and include all the significance, right, that is behind the volley? That was a really big challenge. And so I read as much as I could and I focused on one story. But in the book, I mentioned that, hey, this is celebrated by Sikhs. Sikhs celebrate Bandi Chhor Divas, and Jains celebrate it differently, and Buddhists celebrate it differently. But at the end of the day, it's all about light over darkness, good over evil, right? So the main theme is the same. So one of the things that I did is I hired sensitivity readers. You know what they are? Have you ever heard of sensitivity readers?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so sensitivity readers, they look at a book to make sure that it's inclusive, that it respects all and religions and males, females, all different types of genders, right? It makes sure that nobody would be offended by any of the word choices that I made. And so I did that because I don't know everything and I don't know everybody else's background. And of course, I interviewed people and I talked to people and I talked to moms and dads and kids as much as I could, but I wanted to make sure that I was as inclusive as author as possible. And the Kids Co team, they had an amazing, my publisher, they were so amazing. They are now acquired by Penguin Random House, and they have been super supportive and really know how to write these books. So this is a book that comes from 170 plus other books, right? So
Mhm,
there's a kid's book about, so this is a kid's book about Diwali,
mhm,
right? And then we've got, I mean, there's so many other books, right? There's a kid's book about advertising,
mhm.
kid's book about, this, and then there's a kid's book about diversity. There's a lot of these books. And so I had to actually research and look at all of these books and make sure that I was staying true to how a kid's book, wanted me to write this book. And if you look at any of these books, there's not a lot of illustrations in there. And that's because they look at the font and they say, kids are smart, and this is a book where kids and grown-ups can read together and learn together.
Right. Thank you so much for that response. And we love hearing also about like how you grew from your journey and how you managed to create such an inclusive environment through your books. And going off of that, we were wondering, what role do you think that storytelling plays with terms of like cultural representation, especially with South Asians? And how do you think that like through creating your book, you were able to help contribute to like a more diverse narrative?
Yeah, I think there's a significant gap right now representing South Asians in children's literature. There's not that many mainstream books, especially nonfiction books, about Diwali that introduces it in a way that's educational and also inclusive, right? I didn't want my book to be super religious, right? Because I want schools to be able to say, "Hey, yeah, this is good. This is okay for me to open up in school." And I wanted it to be inclusive. I wanted it to normalize the volley, and I wanted to provide kids with the opportunity to see South Asians in the book. So when you look at it, you're like, "Oh, I see myself in this." Right? And it didn't matter if you're South Asian or you're from a different cultural background. You can open the book and be like, "Yeah, I get it. I see myself in this." And then when they see my name and they're like, "Oh, that's a different name." Somebody with my name might see themselves in there too. I talk about, the puja that we do, the prayer that we do, and some kids might do that at home, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I do that too." And now they have a tool to share that with others. So I think there's a huge gap right now, but there are more authors coming, and please go look for South Asian authors, support South Asian authors. There's fiction, nonfiction, there's adult books, and there's youth books. There's so many great books out there. Definitely support them. Without your support, we're not going to have more authors step up and write more books.
Thank you so much for kind of just telling us about what this plays like in the greater picture of South Asians and how their life is, especially as immigrants in different cultures and countries.
Yeah.
So kind of moving on from that is, do you have any advice for like aspiring authors, that particularly those that are willing to share like cultural stories?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys write or not, but when you write, I want you to think about how authentic and write authentically as possible. Don't be afraid to write how you feel, right? Don't be afraid to share something that's inside you about your culture, because that can spark all that creativity, and it can spark a lot of meaningful conversations and connections with other people. Share your perspective, right? Research. Make sure you talk to people. Don't shy away from talking to people and asking those questions. Your story matters, right? And trust that it matters, right? Embrace your unique background because it is unique, and people do want to learn about it and be proud of your heritage. I mean, I wasn't that proud of my heritage, but as I grew up and older, I wanted other people to learn about it so that they could understand it, and so I could be proud of it and share. I mean, it's such a beautiful culture that we live in, right? We've got lots of colors and festivals, and it's just something that we want to share with everyone.
Right. Thank you so much for answering our questions. And more importantly, thank you so much for being here. It was really amazing hearing about your journey, especially with your new book, A Kid's Book to Diwali. We hope that like a lot of kids get a chance to read it and learn more about Diwali as well as just South Asian culture in general. And we really just appreciate and love the work you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you. And if you have a chance, what's really important to me is please bring this book. Get a copy of this book at bookaboutdiwali.com. Get a copy for your teachers. Get a copy for your friends. Give it to your nieces and nephews. Read it with them, right? Just don't give it to them. Read it with them and
Mhm.
share your stories and share your experiences with them, because we need to get this book in every single school, right? And that's kind of my mission. I really hope that happens.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and hopping on this call with us. We really appreciate it, and we would love to see your future projects and everything you.
You. Thank you. This is so fun.
Thank you.